All right, good morning everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Dominic Savage. I work at Integrate AV as the Queensland Education Manager, and today I'll be talking to you about media arts and how media arts fits in with the curriculum. I've taught as a secondary high school teacher and also acted as a learning leader for the arts at BCE, and before that actually worked in the information technology field as an account manager for schools and working with schools to integrate technology within their classrooms. So what is media arts about? I guess there's a few underpinning factors for media arts. It is actually in a curriculum from foundation to year 10, and there's a focus on design skills, creative thinking and storytelling, as well as production skills, evaluation and critique of media text. Some of the underpinning factors that we'll look over today are the key concepts, which are technologies, representations, audiences, film languages and institutions. And we're going to look at a variety of different units for junior secondary and how you could implement some ideas there in the classroom using smart notebook software and SLS online. So if we have a quick look at the actual Australian curriculum, I like to backwards map where the student should be. So we look at the year 10 standards and then backwards map to year 9, 7 and 8. So in this first section here of the achievement standards, you can see that this part here concentrates mainly on the responding side of the syllabus. And the bottom part here looks at the making side of the achievement standards. So in responding, we've got things like evaluate and analyse, where students look at cultural viewpoints, media conventions, technical and symbolic meaning, and how these are created on screen. In the making section, the keywords there are students are creating, producing or manipulating content, designing and collaborating with their peers. So this really underpins all of the achievement standards from foundation up to grade 10, and basically is broken up into these two parts. So here's an example of a unit that we focused on for year 7s and 8s, and they really had an introduction to the key concepts of media studies and how creating photographs and shot compositions work. So they looked at a design task of how to write a story that could come to life using photographs. And their production task then was using those photos to create a short story. And in a critique task, we looked at a film analysis of a children's production. Then moving on, they looked at advertising and how advertising works, and looking at designing a Photoshop poster, print advertisement, and producing that with a advertising campaign for a production or video ad. And then we looked at cultural stories down here for basically Australia and Indigenous cultures and how stories are different throughout history and cultural perspectives. And then at the end there, looking at new media and how YouTube and new media technologies and distribution platforms are changing TV broadcasts and how they're moving to online. So students really enjoyed looking at creating content for a YouTube channel and deconstructing a YouTube channel that looks at social messages and call to action. Then progressing in years 9 and 10, we had students progress to news broadcasts, Australian films, sitcoms, so comparing Australian discourses with American discourses. Special effects was looking at production techniques and how they can use video editing, which was then enhanced in grade 10, looking at animation, stop motion and video editing, autobiographies and documentaries, short films and radio programs. So that was just a snapshot of one of the schools that I worked at to give you an idea of the progression. You can also look at a plethora of different topics, and media studies is very diverse in that there is a whole lot of different topics that you can study, from short films, film genres, film history, looking at international cinema, to new media platforms, game design, interactivity, basically a lot of things to do with current media, social media, online presence, and then looking at basically traditional moving image. I guess when you're focusing these things or designing a unit, you really just need to come down to these two things about the making and responding. And you could start off with actually the kids creating and designing their concepts for a video, short film, or levels for games. And then the responding part goes hand in hand. So they could respond to moving image, a film, a website, game design, and basically looking at those skills in terms of responding, correlating with the making tasks. Moving on to our key concepts in media studies, the 5 key concepts that underpin most studies within media. Some sort of differ as you progress throughout the years, but these are the 5 main media key concepts that we're going to look at. So what I'm going to do is jump into SLS Online to cover those contents further. And the first one we're going to look at here is technologies and how technologies could be used in the classroom as a key concept. In one of my classrooms, we looked at the history of cinema and how technologies have changed over the age from the birth of still photography to moving images, and how moving images came to be, and manipulating on the film studios, and how film studios developed the studio system and created content. From there, you might want to jump into a shout out activity. These are great shout out activities that you could use for brainstorming. I've used them in the classroom just for questions to check on kids' content, their understanding of the content. And you can run these, you can see here I've got who's the first movie made, who invented the camera, and what special effects are. So we can see here that some people have responded, and it is quite controversial, as it might take them a while to figure out who actually created the first movie, and then moving into the first movie camera. So you could have these up on the board as discussion points for kids, and then moving on to some students that responded here to the 3rd question. All right, moving on to representations. There's a lot of different ways that you could look at representations. One that I find works really well is obviously looking at the theory behind representations, how representations work in the media. And then one that's really accessible and relatable to a lot of year levels is looking at advertising and how advertising works to represent certain people in the media. And here's an activity that we did in class and looked at deconstructing as a class a simple advertising message, and if there are any representations in the ad and how people are represented. Once we did that as a class, we actually broke up into smaller groups, and students actually produced a workspace on 3 different ads. So I'll show you quickly how that looks. So if you create a workspace in SLS Online, you can actually break up the content into different groups and teams. Here I've got 3 different groups. So if I click on the first group, each student will have the same handout, which will have these 3 images, and each different group analysed one of the advertisements by answering the questions. So the first group here looked at the Pepsi ad and how the Pepsi ad was representing women, and they said here that it's representing women as being perfect and that it's not a realistic representation of people because not everyone looks like this. And it's idolising this idea connection between beauty and drinking their product. The other 2, what you can do is actually just click this little X here and go back into the next group and look at their response. So this is a great way to free your time up, not collecting students' work. You can just basically click on each group and look at their response here and have it projected up on the smartboard. And this one here was looking at Coca-Cola and how they're trying to, I guess, look at happiness and how happy these people are and correlating the 2 between being represented as being happy when you drink Coke. Okay, moving on to the next one. And audiences are a really easy way to look at the key concepts from television rating, or what is quality television. And one of the interesting ways, I guess, is to look in Australia first and then overseas. And we looked at how the AFI Awards have changed their format to the AACTA Awards and what that means in terms of Australian audiences, what we're viewing in reality television, comedy. Some of the students do know these programs and some of them would be new to them. So it's just interesting starting those conversations too in terms of entertainment, and then looking at free-to-air broadcasters and how that space has diversified over the years to many multiple media outlets. And we got students to actually pitch a topic for a channel and looking at how each channel has a subset of channels underneath each one. The next one that you need to look at is institutions and how media institutions constrain or produce and enable moving image production. And now there's a plethora of different media companies on a global scale that are producing content. How this has changed over the years, this was a great publication that we looked at from Metro magazine, and how audiences are moving to streamed media, and streaming media is changing the way people are producing content. It's more readily available. We're not tuning in at a certain time. We can watch lots of shows all at once, and how this model is changing for audiences. The last one, looking at film languages. This one here is an example of student work where they actually produced different posters and screenshots of technical camera angles, and we looked at the theory behind that and how meaning is created on screen through the different shot sizes, and looking at film analysis, how plot devices and themes work with signs and symbols and semiotics. So once you've got, a brief introduction to the key concepts, what I like to do, and I'm just going to show you today, you can actually run a quiz in SLS. It's quite simple. You hit the plus button and hit start quiz and fill out your multiple choice details here. Click on multiple choice, add in your question and answers, and then hit finish. And I'll just show you quickly one that I've created here that students may want to jump in and have a look at. Basically, you hit start as the teacher. You can hit review results for previous results, or what I might do, I'll just see if anyone's connected there. And what we can do is hit start, and that will start a fresh quiz here. So you can actually see the progression when you hit start of who's actually in there and answering the questions at a certain time. Kids can move at their own pace, and you can change it to the questions that are being asked as well. So you could leave those on the screen. If you can say, what question are you up to? I'm up to question 2. Well, this is the responses here. And on the right-hand side, you can actually see the progress of students and who's answering as they go through. When you're actually finished, you can, students submit all their answers through the log on. So they need to log on to hellosmart.com. You'll have your teacher ID name here, and they enter in a code to join the class. When you're actually finished, sorry, I just jumped out of that. I'll just hit finish quiz in here. And when you finish, you can review results. And when I'm reviewing the results here, you can see how many people got each question right, and the other respondees, or if they didn't respond. And I can actually go through these with the class on the board with the correct answers. And as a teacher, I can actually export those results to an Excel to track student learning, to see how many got each question right, if people haven't completed it, what questions you may need to look on in the future to focus your study area. Or a really useful tool here is to do a post-test and a pre-test. So at the start of the term, you might run a quiz and go through the questions, and at the end of the term, track student progress to see if they've improved. So that's a quick introduction to SLS. Just going to go back to Notebook to have a look there about the additional things here. So we covered off the key concepts and looking at an introduction to the key concepts. Another great way to do this is by developing real-world links for students in design and production. So here's one of the examples that we used with our Year 10 students who actually designed a video concept for Videos for Change. So what I'd suggest doing is looking at either a real world project in the classroom, if that's a film competition. ADAM Queensland or ADAM Australia have a lot of ADAM awards that they run each year, and you can actually enter student videos. This one was looking at how students can use Videos for Change online to have a call to action. And it's highly recommended if you want to do this. You can actually go to High Resolves, and they run a free PD for teachers to then enter into the classroom with some resources on how you can use production in your classroom, and also how students can use videos for a positive message and social change. So in our class, what we did is the students actually pitched their designs and came up with a treatment or outline. Each student pitched their, it's quite confronting, pitched their designs to the class. The ones that weren't comfortable obviously pitched that in small groups or individually. And from there, they designed a storyboard outline of their video, and in small groups produced their 1-minute video collaboratively together. And then from there, I've got some screenshots here of their work, which you're happy to look on Videos for Change at some of the finalists' work there. And a lot of them came up with, real issues around domestic violence, bullying, social inclusion, exclusion. A lot of them looked at mental health issues as well and how to deal with that. And that was sort of from a year 10 perspectives, but the year levels are up to you. I think it's open now for years 7 to 12. So that's a great way. Obviously the winners on the Videos for Change website do get filmed on the project. So that's another way, and their finalists are put on the website and on YouTube. So it's a great way to sort of interact with students into a real world project. And here are some links that I thought I'd put in for those teachers out there who may be looking at where to go for additional resources. Screen Australia has some great stuff there and examples of what's happening in the industry, as well as your local Australian Teachers of Media Association. And Scoodle, of course, has a plethora of information there around media arts and how that aligns to the curriculum, as well as Metro Magazine and Film Inc. There's a bunch of stuff as well from Canada and the UK around media studies and how to incorporate that into the classroom. The UK version is probably a little bit more comprehensive or aligned to the Australian standards. But really, as I said before, there's a lot of topics that you can use within the media arts programs. So that's enough from me today. If you have any questions about anything that we've gone through in this brief webinar, please feel free to email me at education@integrateav.com.au, and we'd love to hear from you and get back to you. And next week in the Smart webinar series, we've got Beck presenting a introduction or refresher course into Notebook and how to use some of the technology there. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.